reason that this didn't happen in comic books. So every area has its own flavor, right? The quilt stores around you are not at all going to be like the quilt stores around me in Chicago. And, you know, the store is usually the taste of the owner, right? So if the owner is really into Civil War reproduction fabrics, then when you go in the store, that's what they're going to see. And some store owners, they're in that niche of a niche, right? So perhaps their fabric mix is very modern, and that's a subset of quilting. And then you have the Civil War reproductions and the country prairie styles. That's also a very narrow subset. And then you have people like quilt stores that try to carry everything. But as you know, you can't carry everything because certain lines don't sell and it's not profitable, or at least stores find out really quickly that they can't carry every single line. And so they have to basically focus on the bestseller. And this is the same thing that happens in comic books, right? So, and I hate to keep using that as an analogy, but it is to me the closest analogy, right? You have nowhere to go. You used to be able to go and buy your comic books off the newsstand, and you can't do that really anymore. You have to go to a comic book store, or you have to order them online. And the thing is people like to open it up and flip through it and see the art. And so they have to go to the store. And I think that's still true of fabric stores. Like, they want to go to the store, they want to feel the fabric, they want to hold open the repeat and see the repeat of the fabric, and they want to say, yes, this is the color I would like to have. And sometimes they're not going to get that from their computer screen. So much like a comic book store, it's flavored by the taste of the owner. If he's into superheroes, that's what you're going to see on the shelf. If he's into those independent sort of artsy comics, that's what you're going to see on the shelf. And there isn't a store that can carry everything because, one, there's so much of it out there, and two, some of it doesn't sell. And so when you look at retail, you know, they have that huge challenge of being able to make everybody happy in the market that they're in. And I think that this is something that Joann is trying to do. If you've been in a Joann's recently, they have announced that they've now carrying thousands of quilting cottons, which they've never carried this much before, except for back in the calico days. And when you go in, you know, there is a difference in the base cotton product in a big box store versus the quilting cotton that you buy at your local quilt store. And that's called that gray good, right? And it's not spelled like the color gray. And that base fabric that they print that pattern on, right? It can be the same pattern, but that base fabric that's going to Joann's is going to be not the same quality that you buy at your quilt store. Your quilt store's cotton is going to be of a higher quality, and that is why it is more expensive than what you can buy at a big box store. And I also think that eventually Joann's is going to find out, well, they'll find out how big the market really is, because when they're left over with all these remnant bolts, then that project will be over.
Why do you think,
so the sales of it is gonna bear it out.
Yeah, why do you think Joann's is going to a lesser quality of fabric? I mean, that seems to me...
They always have.
They always have.
They always have. Yeah, they always have. And that may be one of the changes that they're making with this new project, although, and I have not gone in to test that fabric to determine if it is any different. I have recently bought cotton fabrics from Joann's, and it is no different in my mind.
It is
than
not,
what it
or
used
it is?
to be. Which it is not the same quality as your quilt store's cotton. It's a lower quality. And the thing is they have to make a bigger margin on it. And they're also not charging $10 a yard for it.
Right, and there's all the coupons and all that other stuff too. They're always
exactly right. So they have to pay a base price that's way cheaper for them, because they just, by the nature of the way they do business, they're going to discount it, and therefore they need to make what profit they can in after that discount's applied.
Yeah.
So this is one, the danger of discounting and coupons, and two, the struggle that an independent retailer has. The independent retailer is looking at where their competition is, and it's other independent retailers, and the discounting that comes from big box and online.
Right.
And there are ways for them to get around that. And what but that's the challenge, right? And so, and here's the other area that an independent retailer is very similar to comic book industry. You're talking about someone who opens a business because they have an affinity or they love the industry in some way. They're not opening quilt stores because there's like gobs of money in it, and we're going to be rolling in dough, because then everyone would open one, right? They open it because they love the industry. They perhaps are a quilter. They love the camaraderie of their local quilt store. They love that, and that's what they want to create for their community. And then it's, oh, right, we're here to make profit. I'm not saying that they'll do it at the detriment of the profit, but there's a connection to why they're opening this instead of a Chipotle or a McDonald's franchise, where they're given a proven method and trained and said, here's how you open one and here's how you make all the money. They're going down this hard road where nothing is really pre-prepared for them, and they are, basically figuring it out in the dark and saying, yeah, they want to own a quilt store. They want to sell quilt fabric.
It's really remarkable when you think about it.
It's a huge challenge.
Yeah. It's amazing. And how much merchandise they have to carry is remarkable. It's a big investment to have a quilt shop. Absolutely. And, again, they're doing it with what? They're doing it with savings. They're doing it with, pensions, retirements. That's why a lot of quilt store owners, open their stores, and they're not my age. They're not in their 30s or 40s. They're in their 60s. They're in their 50s. And it is quite remarkable. It's also something, I saw quite a bit of in comics. And it's just now that you're starting to see the younger store owner, which is that shift in the market that I was talking about. We're starting to see younger people coming in, which is starting to lower the average age, which is good. And it's going to bring a revitalization, but it's also going to bring changes to an industry that is very rigid in how it does things. And so that's where I think some of the growing pains are going to come from. Rigid in what way?
Again, you're talking about fabric companies that sell fabric in one particular way. They take pre-orders, they print to order, maybe a little extra, they ship it. They then take orders for the next collection. There's really no area there to account for when a particular line is more popular than another. It's sort of like, well, we'll reprint that maybe in the fall. It's like, no. We have demand for it now. but we can't get it.
That's really interesting.
And, it's sort of like this, again, there's, it's part of the printing processes that have been around for ages. It's part of their ordering processes. I think distribution, at least my experiences with distribution companies for, let's say, for someone like me to get my patterns and my products out into the world, I find those methods to be very antiquated. They need a lot of new infrastructure there that perhaps they're not able to do, or they're just unwilling to do. And so quilt stores are still ordering the same way they were 5 years ago, when everything about the internet and how we live day to day with phones in our pockets and all that is different from 5 years ago. And so those are the growing pains that the industry is starting to experience. And I think that, again, this is going to come from, a shift in demographic, a shift in education. I think, one of the things that I did in comic books was teach comic book stores how to, upgrade their infrastructure, and specifically by putting in point of sale and inventory tracking and things like that. So, you can't know how you're running your business until you can actually track how well you're doing. That was never something that the comic book industry did. Very few retailers tracked their inventory before the distributor that I worked for came up with a point of sale program that allowed them to track their inventory, be more successful, drop lines that weren't selling well, because, they perhaps love Superman comics, but perhaps Superman comics don't sell well in their area, but they love it, so they keep buying it, and that's true of a lot of things in this industry. I think that, not just putting in the point of sale, but knowing how to understand the reports that come out of it. Those are skills that if you just went into this business because you loved it, maybe aren't the skills that are highest on your list. And if you don't have someone in your organization or in your store structure that can look at those reports and report them to you, you just keep buying this stuff because it's awesome, thinking that it sells when you have like a whole back room of it. Again, I think that stores have they have the hardest road because they don't have the time. You're running a store, it's almost a 24/7 job. You barely have time to watch television for yourself, much less watch training video on how to use their point of sale system.
That's really interesting.
So I get it.
And do you find that there are resources out there? Or are they all really just doing this all on their own? Is there someone like what you said, where you went helped comic book stores sort of modernize? Is there a resource out there for people to do this, or again, is it just sort of hoping to stumble onto someone like you that just could help them, think about it differently, or sort of how do they? If someone's listening to this, which no one's listening yet, but if someone ever does listen to this, and they're a store owner and they go like, yeah, that's me, where do they turn in terms of like trying to think through things?
Well, so there's a lot of different resources that are happening right now. There is an organization called the Fab Shop Network, which does have sort of the idea, it's like a store in a box. And what that is it's like training manuals and employee handbooks and sort of like what to do if you need to run a sale, best methods for counting your inventory. They have all those resources as part of being a member of the Fab Shop Network, and that's for fabric stores, fab shops. And so there's resources there. There's also training that does happen at Quilt Market, and I have been one of those speakers, and I am going to be one of the speakers at the spring 2018 market. And those